Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting preview for this week's Open Championship, the last major of the year, and of course heading over the pond for a little bit of Scottish golf. If you liked what we got at the Genesis Scottish Open, well, this week we get that on steroids. Gonna break down in this video what to expect out there from Royal Troon Golf Club, and then afterwards give you an idea of my modeling, some of the key stats that I'm using to identify my top plays, and then towards the end, what most of you are here for, and look at my top exposure of the week. We'll talk some of my DFS core plays and values, and of course, a few outright bets and top 10s that I've got my eye on for this major. So a lot to get through, a lot of information here. Let's start it off with a look at Royal Troon and how I'm modeling for this major. Our modeling for Royal Troon looks a lot more like it would for a PGA Championship or US Open than it normally would for an Open Championship. And the main reason for that is a lot of off-the-tee emphasis. Unlike what you had at St. Andrews where you could kind of bomb it wherever you wanted to, this track has a legit penalty for missing offline, and the further you miss offline, oftentimes the harsher that penalty. So unlike even some of the PGA Championship or US Open courses where if you miss the fairway by a foot, you're going to be penalized the same as missing it by 20-30 yards, this week, precision is going to be rewarded. You saw that the last time we played this in 2016, but when you go hole by hole, it becomes especially apparent that this golf course is going to reward some of your better players. The main reason that this year is going to even add on top of that to what we saw in 2016 is the rough is a lot healthier this time. About 5-6 yards off of every single fairway, you get some of the lushest rough that you're going to find on pretty much any course in the world. So I think that this is going to play difficult, especially if you're missing fairways. And on top of that, you've got your normal Scottish style greens. They're small, they've got undulation, they're quick, and with the typical traditional pot bunkers that we get over there on that side of the soil, it is going to be pretty tricky from pretty much every aspect of the game. So unlike some of the other majors, other Open Championships, where maybe we're looking at more of a creative skill set, this week it's a little bit more ball striking heavy. So that's what I mean when I say it compares a little bit more to a US Open or PGA Championship than we would normally have over here at the Open. That being said, our approach profile definitely skews towards the mid to longer irons. I'd say that 150 to 225 range is going to be where a majority of your shots are coming from. So when you take a look at my model weights over there on the Patreon, you'll see that from 150 yards and up is where a lot of my emphasis is going to be. Off the tee, I think it's going to be an extremely off the tee heavy kind of week. So irons are always number one, pretty much regardless of golf course, but a close number two is this off the tee. And if you had to choose between distance and accuracy, I would favor the driving accuracy side of things, just because even with a wetter links type of soil, you get quite a bit of rollout out there. So even if it does play softer here in 2024 than maybe what we've had in the past, your shorter hitters aren't going to have a problem at a 7,300 yard golf course. What's far more important are avoiding those pot bunkers, which are going to be very strategic and something you have to worry about on pretty much every single tee shot, but also avoiding the gorse bushes and out of bounds, which really come into play if you're spraying it off the tee. Around the green is important at this link style track. I would say around the green would be especially important in our modeling if it's going to play a little bit windier here in 2024. I'll say that some of the early forecasts look like a pretty typical Open Championship, which is why I have it down here at number 3. But let's say that we end up getting like 20 to 30 mile an hour sustained winds, well then around the green might even become our number 2 key stat. But for right now, it's important, but not the end all be all for me. I'm looking at shots gained at Open Championships. I think there's a lot of comparisons that you can draw, albeit this a little bit more of a difficult off the tee test. Your putting is a little bit de-emphasized here, but of course you can't ignore it out there in your modeling, and a little bit of bogey avoidance mixed in as well. This is more so to try and find guys that are more strategic, can think themselves around a golf course, and because this is such a different test than what we get in America, I did think it was the best idea to go after comp courses. So if you're going to try and find that history, I think looking at Open Championships, anything on the Rota is a pretty good idea to go with, but like I said, nothing is going to be a perfect one-to-one comparison because the off-the-tee test here is just so much different. With that being said, who are the kind of players that I'm looking at? And unlike what we typically have here, I have not actually bet all of these outright yet. So the reason for that is the weather end of the spectrum. Before you go out there and you get any exposure this week, guys, you have to be looking at the forecast. In Scotland, we get some of the bigger variants when it comes to weather conditions, and that is no surprise over here in the UK. It is always known for that. Open Championships are often shaped by the kind of weather that we get, and depending on what side of the draw you get, whether one side's going to get a big advantage over other could be a huge factor on whether you're going to win or lose your bets this week. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of getting ready with a player pool of guys that I want to go out there and bet outright. And then when we get the tee times out there tomorrow, when we get a better weather forecast, I'll be able to actually decide on what I bet outright. So of course, right, I try to get these previews out here on Monday so that everyone can digest them, has plenty of time before lockout there on Thursday to go out there and get their stuff in. But just want to give you guys some ideas. And if you end up looking at the tee times on Tuesday, they're in a solid spot, the weather's not going to shaft them, well, there's a good chance that I'm getting to these players. And regardless, they'll be a key fixture in my PGA DFS pool, so definitely still core play and value plays. That being said, let's start off with our top play, who might be my only outright bet this week. If I end up going in on the Scottie Scheffler train at plus 500, he's going to be the only person that I bet. And if I choose to do so, it is going to be like a 5 or 6 unit bet. The reason for playing Scottie this week is, of course, world number 1, form that is unmatched pretty much in the field. But I think that this is the perfect style of golf course for Scottie Scheffler to win his first Open Championship. Like I was mentioning about the US Open comp, even the PGA Championship similarities, this golf course is going to play about as close to his skill set as you're going to find. He's maybe the longest player in tour. He's up there at least in the top 10, but is the most accurate when it comes to distance from center of fairway. So if you're looking for players that when they miss, don't miss all that far offline, Scottie Scheffler is the best player in the world. Only misses about 16 yards off the center line, which is a lot better than anyone else in the field. So he's a player that can take on this course, right? Take on the difficult conditions. And people at Pinehurst were in love with Scottie Scheffler because of his ability to hit those chip shots off of tight lies. Open championships demand that same kind of test, but the only reason I think that people haven't seen him pop at these Opens is because of the lack of off the tee emphasis. I mean, think about St. Andrews, even think about Royal Liverpool, that was a little bit more wide open off the tee. Those courses weren't separating you when it came to your driving like a PGA Championship or US Open will, right? US Opens, PGA Championships, you hit it long and straight, you're going to gain a ton of strokes to the field. This week, if you hit it long and straight, you are going to gain a ton of strokes to the field. You're going to avoid those double, triple bogeys that come into play with those gorse bushes. And at $12,800, he's still not expensive enough out here in this kind of field for DFS. And at plus 500, he is the kind of course fit where I might literally just bet one guy and move on, right? These other bets, right? If I end up taking Scottie for an outright, then maybe I do take Jon Rahm or like some of these other guys that we talk about for a top 5 or top 10, right? Value plays, I'm looking for top 10s anyways. Not really looking to bet some of the guys further down the board. But if I do take Scottie as an outright, you know, it'd be a heck of a stand to take it 5-1. So we'll have to see if he gets the better end of the weather spectrum. But if he does, if he actually gets an advantage over the first 2 days, then book it. I'll be betting him at 5-1. And at a major championship where you're hoping to have some sort of a sweat on Sunday, I think Scottie Scheffler is the clear guy to go after. If you're just trying to take one guy and move on. And arguably, I know some people may disagree with this, I think that this is the best course fit we've had for him outside of the Masters and Augusta National. And because of the off-the-tee emphasis, I think gives him a good chance to go out there and win. So if we're going to get better odds on him to win this event than what we had there at the PGA in Valhalla, then I'll take it there at 5-1. Moving on, our next play is going to be Jon Rahm. And hey, Jon Rahm definitely hasn't played well in the majors out here this year. So that's why you're getting a 25-1 number on him. It's also why he's cheaper than guys like a Bryson, McIlroy, and Xander. But I'll remind you guys, when Jon Rahm left for the Live Tour, it was like the sky was falling, right? And just to remind people, because they may have forgotten how good this guy was, it was because he was maybe the second best player in the world. I mean, Scottie at that point had kind of, broken out, right? People were already all over Scottie at that point. Even he's even more so now, right? I mean, obviously everyone knows about Scottie now, but Jon Rahm was pretty damn close to what Scottie Scheffler was. Now, maybe a step back because his form had kind of stagnated a bit, but he was winning majors and he was winning a lot of these top tier events. He was essentially Scottie Scheffler before Scottie Scheffler came around. And the courses where Jon Rahm has really made his hay for his career are the difficult type of test, where off the tee you can separate yourself, because Jon Rahm, when he's playing his best golf, hits the ball like Scottie Scheffler off the tee. He hits almost every single fairway and he hits the ball a country mile. Now, the 2024 sample size in majors is the only reason to talk yourself off of them. And frankly, a lot of your databases, because we don't use live golf stats, you're going to see him as like number 67 in the field when it comes to his total model ranking. If you take a look at the live finish finishes, though, it's been a top 10 in all but one of his starts. The guy's been on fire, gaining strokes in all 4 stat categories very regularly. He's playing solid golf, and if you're ignoring that over there on the live golf side, well, I think you're making a bit of a mistake. That doesn't mean that Jon Rahm's going to go out there and find success, but when you compare him to some of the other guys around him, I think he has the same, if not a slightly higher hit rate than some of these other players, and I think he's going to be a fraction of the ownership. People are going to play Xander at 11,200. I think people are going to play Aberg after the top 5. Morikawa we'll talk about. I think he's a lovely play this week, but all these 10K guys are going to get their attention as well, right? 11K out there this kind of week. Jon Rahm might be like 10% owned, perhaps even just like 11, maybe 12% at the very most. Either way, he's not going to be chalk out there this week, and I think he's got a legit chance to win. So 25-1, I think the pendulum has just gone way too far on Jon Rahm, because historically, in off the tee test where you get this link style setup, he definitely has the around the green play for it. I mean, we know that. We've seen it at these kind of tracks in the past, and then the off the tee play plays directly into his skill set as well. So, if I'm betting Scotty outright, I'm probably not taking Jon Rahm at 25-1, but if I'm not taking Scotty outright, there's a really good chance that I'm betting Jon Rahm at 25-1. So I like him for a lot of leverage in DFS, and in general, I think has legit upside to win this kind of golf tournament. Next up, we've got ourselves Collin Morikawa, who actually has better odds to go out there and win. So he is 16-1 to go out there and take this thing. And once again, if I'm betting Scotty to win, I'm probably not able to bet Collin Morikawa at 16-1. What you like about Collin is that driving accuracy. Maybe not as prolific of a driver as somebody like a Jon Rahm or Scotty Scheffler, but Morikawa's going to keep himself out of the trouble. And this year has been the year of Collin Morikawa. This guy has more top 5 finishes than anyone not named Scotty or Xander. He's going out there and getting into contention week in and week out, and it is just a matter of time before Collin Morikawa gets his win. I mean, he's gone 4th, 13th, 14th. Believe it or not, the 13th and 14th are some of his worst finishes in this entire year, because all the other starts are pretty much top 10s. The guy has been eerily consistent. If you take a look at the shots gained metrics, you'll see that he's gaining across all 4 categories. It has actually made the putter a huge strength, where he's gaining over 0.7 strokes per round. So in the past, right, that was usually the worry with Collin Morikawa, is that he would be a little bit inconsistent with the flat stick. Well, now he's actually made that a strength of his game. He's won an Open Championship before. We know he can take on the around the green test. Really, what we're worried about with Collin is whether the conditions get to him, because when we get those real gnarly wins, sometimes Collin Morikawa can eject a bit. In DFS, I don't think you need a win for him to succeed at $9,900, especially with how soft the pricing is on this kind of week. And even as a second man in Scotty Scheffler lineups, if we get like that T3, T4 finish, which he's done just a shit ton of times already in 2024, well, that's probably viable as a second man in. So if we're betting Scotty outright, again, probably not getting the outright exposure, but a DFS is regardless going to be a fixture in my exposure, and does probably chalky this week. He's number 4 in my total model. Everyone can see the form, right, and make their own conclusions. I don't think he's going to be a huge leverage play by any means. You might get that with Jon Rahm, probably not down here with Morikawa, but still a player that I'll take with some ownership, because I think he fits this golf course perfectly, has that driving accuracy we're looking for, and with those mid to long irons is checking a lot of those boxes too. And now for our last core play here, before we go a little bit further down the board and do a little bit of dumpster diving, it's our last potential outright bet. And if we don't take Scotty, this will be the third and probably the last outright I play, but that'll be Brooks Koepka at $9,000. In DFS, I think that price tag is at least $1,000 too low, but I don't know if he's going to be chalky, because people have this narrative in their head that you play Brooks at the PGA Championship and US Open. Now, maybe you open that up to the Masters now that he's had the top 5, has been in the mix a few times at this point. But don't forget, Brooks Koepka started his career on the European Tour, actually started on the Challenge Tour before going over there to the European Tour, and then went over here to America. And just like you've seen at the Masters, some of these other golf courses with tricky around the green shots, he's more than capable of keeping it together. And if you give him a setup off the tee with that kind of resembles the US Open and the PGA Championship, well, why not play Brooks Koepka if it's going to be that same kind of test off the tee? Because when this guy goes out there and grabs a major championship by the horns, it's normally because he's super long and super straight off the tee, right? He just bullies the field out there with his ball striking. Well, this is the kind of golf course in Royal Troon where you can bully it out there with your strength. So at $9,000, I think he's live in this kind of event to win. And unless he's like 20-25% in DFS, I think he's going to be very reasonably owned. In fact, I have him probably closer to like 15 to 17% ownership, which would be very reasonable given the price tag. And at 40-1, I mean, you can't tell me that if we played this event at this golf course 40 times, that he wouldn't at least win once or twice. In fact, I think he'd probably win 3 or 4 times out of those 40 starts, given his immaculate track record in the major championships. Taking a look at his form, right, and trying to shake him off is just, it's not something you can do with Brooks. Or you can't even say the fact that he finished like outside the top 15 last week would be a negative, because he doesn't give a shit about those live events. And honestly, some people can say that, right? Like if a Wyndham Clark or Colin Morikawa was like, oh, I don't care about those events, you'd probably roll your eyes because you know that they care about that prize money. Brooks Koepka does not need that money. We know that. We know he literally only cares about the major championships. So even if he doesn't have that amazing form we're looking for, I'll take a shot on him at $9,000. That is way too cheap on Brooks Koepka, especially when he could win this golf tournament. And like I said, if he ran this tournament 40 times, he's winning 2 or 3 times out there, in my opinion. Before we talk about our dumpster diver plays, our diamonds in the rough this week, I want to remind you guys of where you can find all of this content yourself. So of course, we're going to talk about 8 players here together, but for I take on every single player in the field, my projections, modeling, key stats, recent form, event history, you guys name it. You can find that over there on my Patreon page. There's a link in the description of this video where you can join the DFS tier and get direct access to these yourselves. Not only will you have all that content out there for the main slate, but I do the same thing for Showdown and rounds 2 through 4. So whether you're looking to get the main event projections or the single round stuff, all of that is posted over there for my Patreons. And the best part about it is you're not going to get price gouged like other sites out there. It is only $15 a month for all of that content. Again, main slate for every golf tournament, also Showdown out there for every single event, and not just like my top 5, top 10 plays. I do it for literally every player that's teeing it up. So this week, there's 158 players. Some weeks, right, 156, you name it. After the cut, it'll be all the players that made the cut, that are projected, modeling, all of that for everyone in the field. So check it out if you've been wondering how to find all of my behind the scenes content. Again, link in the description of the video, and you can get all of my player poll, all of my projections and ownership for this week. Now for the second half of this video, which of course is going to be our value plays. And the first value is another former Open champion, right? Like a few of the guys that we talked about. And Shane Lowry, $8,200. He's got a top 10 at plus 360. So that is the main bet that I'm eyeing at this stage. And what I love about Shane Lowry is the driving accuracy. He is a top 5 driving accuracy player on the PGA Tour this year, and a player that fits the around the green test here. And in 2024 has been a lot more consistent with the iron play. So if we take a look at the last 12 measured rounds, it hasn't been anything incredible for Shane Lowry, but he's been very solid in all 4 stat categories. You zoom out a little bit, you look at the last 24 measured rounds. Once again, nothing earth-shattering, but he's been doing Shane Lowry sort of things. And the courses where he's got a legit chance to win are when conditions get a little bit dicey. So if we get later in the week, and this is looking like it's going to be a real blustery Open, as of right now, it doesn't really look like that. But, you know, forecasts change. Who knows? By the time we get there to Wednesday, if it's going to be like Royal Portrush when he went out there and won, then maybe I do take him outright for something like that. I'm not sure the kind of outright number that's going to be available at that stage, but the top 10 for sure makes sense at plus 360. So I do think that he's going to get some ownership in DFS, $8,200. A lot of people are going to be using this kind of player as your third man in. So I think it'll be probably like 15% owned, maybe 16% out there in GPPs, but that's not high enough to get me off of them out there in those kind of contests. Even in the big lottery contest, not high enough ownership to get me off that kind of play. A guy that just projects well, top 10 at plus 360, right? If he's got what, like a higher than 20% chance to go out there in top 10, well, that's got a pretty decent chance to go out there and be optimal, right? If you top 10 at $8,200, that is likely enough, which is the idea with going out there and taking them in lineups. Next up, we've got ourselves Sepp Straka, who finished second in last year's Open, a course that I think fit his game maybe a little bit better. But what you love about Sepp is a lot of what we said about Shane Lowry. He's getting a lot more used to that European style golf, right? Second place last year shows us a lot of that. He's very accurate off the tee, a top 5 player on the PGA Tour when it comes to his driving accuracy, and has been much, much better with the irons. The added little bonus is that on fescue, these DP World Tour type of greens, he's been excellent in his small sample size. So just like Lowry, take a look at the last 12 measured rounds, nothing's really going to pop off the page. He's just been solid across the board. Short game has actually been a little bit hairy lately. You zoom out a little bit, not much is going to change. He's been kind of consistent with his skill set this year, and the fact that his ball striking numbers have been excellent pretty much no matter when we checked up on him, and the short game has left a little bit to be desired. And just to remind ourselves, this golf course around the green, right, it's tricky, but he's kind of used to that DP World Tour style of golf, the link style golf that we're going to get this week, and the putter's de-emphasized, right? And if anything, the putter's been an issue for him this year. And on fescue, again, the small sample size, he's been really, really good, gaining over a stroke putting per round. So it's $7,100, plus 750 out there for a top 10. I think it's got legit upside for that. And I probably wouldn't bet him outright under any circumstances, not like a Shane Lowry, but that top 10 I think is well in play, which for DFS would be more than enough at that kind of price tag. Heck, even a top 15 for Sepp Straka is probably what we're looking for. So if we're going to get low ownership there, I think it'll be sub 10%, maybe even like sub 7 or 8% owned out there in GPPs. He's going to be an excellent play for leverage and a guy that I'm looking to get over the field on. Next up, we've got Louis Oosthuizen at $6,800, who, based on his top 10 equity, you can look at this, right? He's got just under a 20% chance to go out there in top 10. He's $6,800, and he's got that, right? He's plus 500 for the top 10. You have guys like Straka that are plus 750. You go up here, right? Shane Lowry's plus 360. He should probably be up here around like $7,400, $7,500, and we're getting them for $6,800. And if you take a look at the Live Golf stuff, it's been excellent. I mean, it's been a top 10, top 5 machine over on that side of the field. European Tour, he has multiple wins during the fall swing. He's got a second on the Asian Tour this year. Regardless of the event that Louis has found himself in, he's been playing really solid golf, and he's a former Open champion. Again, I think there's a certain style you have to play to go out there and win an Open championship. He's very accurate off the tee, and other link style courses like on PGA Tour, for example, even PGA Championship at Kiowa Island, he's found success, and that was at a course that was way too long out there for Louis Oosthuizen. So all things considered, I think he's playing some sneaky good golf, and that's not going to be reflected out there in the shots gained metrics because it's all coming from the Live Tour. Even that DP World Tour stuff out there when he had the multiple wins, you're not going to see that reflected out there for Louis. So a player that should have been out there at the Pinehurst, again, couldn't make it due to some of his qualification. Good thing is, because he's a former Open champion, well, he gets to play this event no matter what. And, if he goes out there and he finishes top 5, well, I think there's a good chance he's going to get into those major championships next year. So, hey, Louis, if you're going to go out there, get into next year, you better take advantage this time because I think it's a pretty good golf course for you to go out there and find some success. And then the last play we're going to go through, super cheap, so $6,200. About as cheap, honestly, it goes the whole way down to $5,000. So there are even cheaper plays that you could get to and that I probably will in a few lineups this week. But a top 10 at plus 1,300 is disrespectful to my boy, Victor Perez, because the shots gained metrics for him are what we're looking for at this kind of golf course. He gains a bunch of strokes off the tee. In fact, over his last 12.6 strokes per round, and he's really good with the mid to long irons. The further away from the hole that you get Victor Perez, the more strokes that he's going to gain to the field. And you might think it's a small sample size thing, but even if we zoom out, he's been solid across all 4 stat categories. Driver's definitely gone a hot letter lately than what we've had for the year, but if anything, right, we want someone really coming in with solid driver form, and that's what you have with Victor Perez. He's been a lot better lately than what we've had for most of the year, and that is probably why he went out there last week and had his first real splash performance for quite some time. He had the top 10 finish there at the Scottish Open, had been making cuts before then, a few other top 10s over the last 4 or 5 months, and that top 10 at plus 1,300 at a European style course that he's a lot more familiar with. Again, it's his first real full year over here on the PGA Tour. I think that it fits his game quite well. I mean, you saw him play well at the Scottish Open, right? He's got the form coming in from last week, and he's a very strong driver of the golf ball. So in terms of made cut equity, I think he has a lot more than other guys in this range, just because he's got the better off the tee play compared to some other players. And while I think Eric Cole's probably the better longer term player, I mean, you could say the same thing about even like an Adam Hadwin, Tom Hoagie. They're guys down here I think are just better than Victor Perez. Perez is the better driver, and at a golf course that I think is going to be so off the tee heavy, and that plays into his, again, link style course that he's played plenty of times in his professional golf career. I think that makes him the better play this week. And he's got better odds out there for the for the top 10. I guess plus 1,300 is pretty crazy stuff out there for that kind of performance. And I think he's more than viable to go out there and do so. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for the DFS and betting preview this week. Before you hopping out of here, go ahead and smash the like button for your boy. And also comment down below who you've got winning this golf tournament. If you can give me somebody at least 20 to 1 that wins, you'll go out there and win a free month of my Patreon page. Once a player's taken once, they cannot be taken again. So go ahead, give me your best guess down below and claim your player for this week. If you end up getting that winner right, you will win a free month of that Patreon page. So like I said, on there's where I post those spreadsheets. You can get access to my projections, player pool ownership for every single guy in the field. And for access to that, to earn that, again, just give me that winner for this week. Best of luck out there with all the exposure that you guys are getting to. And I'll see you guys for the rest of the content throughout the week. That'll include our live stream Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We'll also have a little bit of prop content coming out at some point whenever we can bet stuff over there on Prize Picks, and all the showdown and prop content throughout the weekend. So subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. We just got over the 5,000 subscriber mark. So liking, right, helps get the content out there to more people, and subscribe to go ahead and add to that number. We're going to try and get to 7,500 by the end of the year, which is a lofty goal for sure, but hey, better to work towards something than nothing at all. So go out there, support your boy if you guys haven't already. Best of luck, like I said before, and I'll see you guys throughout the rest of the week.